Welcome to Michigan Football at the Voice of
The
College
show starter
Football.
right there.
I am one of
Oh
your hosts,
yeah.
Desmond. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry, I just had the most inopportune time to have a cough. But anyway, let me start that over. Welcome to Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. I am one of your hosts, Desmond. I'm here with my partner, Dre, and here with the man himself, Mark Rogers. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the channel. Also share the video out on social media. It helps grow the channel as well. And also subscribe to Mark's main channel, The Voice of College Football. Join his Discord where you can talk not only college football, but also NFL football 24/7, 365. Gentlemen, how we doing? That was a bit of a unique intro, but Dre, how you doing, man?
Better than you, apparently. It's funny. I gotta say, I've lost track of how many of these we've actually done. But I think that's literally the first time you have ever done something like that. That was amazing. It really was. I don't think you could joke like you meant like that was just incredible time, impeccable, literally. But
So
we
to
keep track of these for you, Dre.
yeah, it's right there.
okay,
It's right
I
there.
thought so. I thought so, but it's just. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Well, and to give our viewers a bit of a behind the scenes look, so when that countdown is happening, we are all off of the screen and all the mics are muted. So the entire time the 30 seconds was going down, I was coughing, trying to like clear my throat. I'm like, man, this is kind of weird. So by the time the counter went down, I'm like, okay, I think I'm good. And literally
you're
the first
not
thing
good.
that came out was
No,
another cough. So
yeah.
yes.
You're good now, right?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
All
Mark,
right,
how
all
you
right.
doing?
Good.
Good. Glad to hear it. Glad to hear
Won't be
it.
good after next Saturday.
Oh boy, we're starting already, huh?
No,
Starting
I'm just joking.
already.
I'm just joking. I'll save that for next week. Uh,
All right. Cool. Well, we kind of a lot to get to. Obviously, Michigan's got a big matchup this week with Illinois. I know that we haven't used the word trap game in a while. I would
it's
imagine that
Iowa.
that may kind of come up.
No, Indiana. Sorry, it was Indiana
Um,
the last time we used it. It was Indiana. I think Indiana wasn't Indiana the game before Penn State, and I'm pretty sure you said that was a trap game. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Indiana is what you termed a trap game last time.
you
It was the
may
game.
be
I know it's the game
correct.
before. It was
Yeah.
in Michigan State, then it was Indiana, then there was Penn State, and I think it was. You thought that was a trap game before Penn State.
Yeah. Yep. And my
So,
my
but
other one
yes,
was Maryland. I called a stress test. I didn't say that one was a trap game, but
no, Indiana was your trap game for sure.
yep, absolutely. And Michigan took care of business. So yeah, we'll get into it. Just want to send just to have a quick note. Let's Toast Media is one of our viewers is tuned in all the time. Definitely appreciate it. Him and I kind of DM back and forth about his channel and just overall stuff. But he puts "Go Blue Michigan," salute to everyone, and prayers up for University of Virginia. They had unfortunately 3 members of their football team just victims of a tragic shooting. So definitely want to just acknowledge that and send thoughts and prayers to the folks involved and just an awful situation. So thank you, Let's Toast Media, for tuning in, and I believe he is in the Virginia area. So he also he's got a channel here on YouTube as well, and had posted a video about that as well. So feel free to tune in to his content. So. Yeah, wanted to, obviously we've got the Fighting Illini this week. And in this, I'm not sure if we can talk about this not being a trap game just because we are headed to just a colossal collision of Michigan and Ohio State. And once again, this is going to be the game that selects who goes to the Big Ten championship and probably going to win the Big Ten championship. Because we don't think that the is it East representative, East or West? Michigan's in the West, right?
No.
We're in the
Michigan's in
East.
the East.
I mean, honestly, I think teams from the West are battling who does not want to go, like who like just really doesn't want to take it. out the West. Like, let's just feel like who they're trying to battle to stay home. That's what they want to do. We don't want to play in a big tournament, So I don't know, but
You know what? On Twitter, I had retweeted a kind of the mock-up. Like different accounts have been doing it on the 12-team playoff. Like basically, right, Tuesday they do the release, and then someone does a mock-up of what the playoff would look like. And Corey, friend of the show, had tweeted essentially, could you look at it as the conference championship game, it actually being a bit of a disadvantage playing in that game? And we kind of started going back and forth on it, but I think the team that I had mentioned was, for example, LSU this year, right? So LSU, I don't know exactly where they're ranked. They're in it as of today with the 12-team playoff, but was saying that they would end up matching up against Georgia, who I would argue, playing Georgia, and let's say they lose, because I believe Georgia would obviously be favored. Even if they didn't get knocked out of the 12-team playoff, I feel like you would be at a disadvantage playing a team like that in your conference championship, right? A really physical team, and then having to then go and play another school. So I think there is something to be said about that, and I'm not quite sure there's a perfect scenario or answer to it, but it was just something that came up that I think an argument could be made that avoiding that game sometimes, right? Not all the time, but just sometimes playing one less game may be beneficial for a team. So Dre, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the team. I mean, some teams do well with playing in continuum, especially when they have a pretty good rhythm going in their style, especially like their style. I think a team with the style that Michigan has, where they are heavily reliant on their running game, which requires a lot of execution, chemistry, offensive line, rhythm for their running backs. I think it's beneficial for them to be playing in continuum as opposed to taking breaks. I know it sounds good in theory, in terms of being able to rest your body physically and stuff like that, but I do think there is a very important aspect to keeping your rhythm, right? Play your game, practice, walk through. I think there's definitely benefits both physically and mentally to doing that. So I don't really read too much into that. I actually think playing high caliber football and high intensity games can be beneficial to a team. Because to me, it sustains that heightened sense of awareness and focus. So I'm actually on the opposite of that. I don't think there's no real negative to playing in a conference championship. It is if you, of course, you lose, because maybe that can hurt your playoff positioning or something like that. But I think it's good. I just, me, Des, I've always said that I think there's too many gaps between, the conference championship and playoffs and all those things. So, I don't have a problem with that.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Well, if you win the conference championship game, then you've got a 4 in 5 chance of getting the bye, which is obviously a guaranteed win or guaranteed move into the second round. So the other thing to understand or consider in this situation is everybody's going to get time off. Like, they're not going to play the conference championship games and then start the playoff the next weekend. So everybody's going to get time off. So even if you don't get a bye, you're not going to have to play the next weekend.
True.
There's going to be time off anyway
for everyone. Yeah, that is interesting. It was an interesting topic that came up, and
the NFL though, like the thing is, like, and I mean, yeah, you have your teams who get first round buys in NFL, but it doesn't seem to affect it. Teams too much in NFL where they'll get a break. Between the regular season and the playoffs. So most teams, especially like the wild card teams, the teams that don't qualify for a first round bye. I mean, they have to play from the last regular season game to the following weekend, which is the playoffs, and they keep going. So, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like for the most part, you of course you will have injuries that happen, and of course guys maybe not have time to recover. But to be quite honest, that's going. It's very rare if you're banged up that 1 week is going to make that big of a difference. Especially if you're injured. Let me rephrase. If you're injured, it's rare that 1 week's going to make that big of a difference compared to if you're feeling a little bumps and bruises. Sure, a little rest can help, but yeah, I just think we kind of overlook. We all put too much stock into that.
I'll take the bye. I'll take the bye for a couple of different reasons. Number one, we can't lose when we got the bye.
True.
So
that is a fact.
everybody else is playing, so half of them are going to lose. So we've eliminated a 50% chance that we can lose a game. And I think we've talked about this before. Let's say you're the 4th seed versus being the 5 seed that has to play the first round game. Okay, you get 2 weeks off instead of 1 week off for those other teams. And like Des, I don't know, it depends on the situation, depends on the team, the health of the team, whether you're going to argue the rhythm standpoint of playing week after week in that repetition. Well, that's going to be broken up for everyone, number one. Number two, versus resting up and getting 2 weeks off. But sitting there for 2 weeks and getting the evaluation firsthand of the two teams that you're going to play the winner of a game that's going to be played the week before you play them, and you get the breakdown for 2 weeks to scout those two teams. And they got to scout each other. They can't scout you. They got to focus on each other. I think that's a pretty decent advantage.
I mean, you could, as a team, you could potentially start watching film on, I mean, let's assume that the players don't watch the game, which they probably will, but you could have a film breakdown and start watching that before the other team even gets home from their flight, if they're an away team. So, I mean, that like you mentioned is really an advantage. But like you said, I think we can nitpick situations and just say, well, for this team it would be better, that one it wouldn't. But it was just an interesting topic I thought about where, like, well, I guess so. I mean, I guess there may be a benefit. Now, I don't think any team is going to intentionally lose a game or anything like that. But just if the situation plays itself out, it may be a benefit.
Plus, if you've got the first round bye, and let's say that the first matchup that you're going to have to play is in Dallas. Well, you go to Dallas at whatever point that your coach feels that you need to be on site and ready for that. Let's say you're playing the winner of Oregon and Penn State, and Penn State's got to fly out to Oregon the week before, and they play there, and then they've got to fly to Dallas. And I don't know, it just shortens everything. Plus, they had to play Oregon. They had to travel.
It is interesting, but yeah, I think the main point and the number one point is, if you're on a bye, you cannot lose unless you're the Detroit Lions. Then we even lose even on bye weeks.
Started by Mark. Gentlemen, I saw a comment though, like for one, it'd be a great segue to an announcement that Des and I have.
I saw that comment.
One Scoop John, and I also want to talk about a question he asked as well. But we'll start here. So the Des and I will be on location for the Illinois game. We will be in the house, in the big house, cold and frozen like everybody else.
I won't be cold. I will be loaded up, snowsuit. Listen, you will see this of me when I'm outside. That's about it. I've got the hood, comes up to the nose, scarf, the snow pants, the bibs, all that. So I'm not gonna be cold, but I will be there with Dre, and we'll be hanging out, tailgating, and then also going to the game as well. So Dre is well connected, so he is got us tickets for the game. So we will be there. One Scoop John, and before we get to John's second question that you wanted to mention, Dre. Want to bring on Alec, who is from Rivals. Alec, thanks so much for joining us. How's it going?
Good. Thanks, guys. Thanks for bringing me on. I appreciate it. Looking forward to talking with you guys.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Okay, so Dre, go to what was John's question that he had?
It came in at 5:45, and he said, "Is our pass game broken? Hoping they'll get some 100+ yard games, and I do think Andrew Anthony is an inch away from being great, to be honest." Oh boy.
Well, let's start here. Actually, I'd like to bring Alec in for this. So,
Okay.
Alec,
I
what are your thoughts on the Michigan pass game? And kind of to John's question, is it broken? What are your thoughts on the Michigan pass game?
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's really weird to kind of evaluate Michigan's pass game just from the pure standpoint that last season, and I know we're talking about 2022, right? Like last season, when you looked at Michigan's pass game, it was really like not explosive. I guess you could say it wasn't explosive. They didn't hit on a lot of big plays. And of course, Ronnie Bell going out with that season-ending injury had something to do with it. But that's also just not Cade McCarthy or Cade McNarma's skill set. So then this year, when they make what in my opinion was an obvious decision to go with JJ to be the starting quarterback, I was like, okay, now the offense should open up a little bit more. They should be able to hit in the passing game. They still bring back Corum. The rushing game still going to be solid. Bring back 3 or 4 starting offensive linemen. So I thought the passing game would be better this year, and it really hasn't been. But I don't know if that's because Michigan knows they can just beat everyone on their schedule that they've played without having to throw the ball, or if it's because they don't really trust JJ to go win them a game. I haven't had an opportunity to watch a ton of Michigan, so I don't know what exactly my opinion is on that. But JJ is obviously incredibly talented. He's significantly more talented than Cade is. So I'd be interested to see if he is put in a position where he has to win a game with his arm, if he's able to do it.
Okay. Dre, what are your thoughts?
I would say that the answer is like a little bit of gray based on everything that you said. I think it's a combination of lack of trust in JJ. I think part of it is due to JJ's, to be quite honest, he hasn't demonstrated ability to be consistent with being accurate with the football at times. But also just Harbaugh's philosophy. Going back to his days with the 49ers, even before then in Stanford. Ideally speaking, Harbaugh wants to control the TOP. He wants to limit turnovers. And he wants his quarterback to take care of the football. If he can have it his way, he doesn't want to have his quarterback to have to win a football game. He prefers to play literally in that box. And unfortunately, when you have talented quarterbacks, or in this case, a talented kid in JJ, it handcuffs his abilities. And you get this, no matter who is in the quarterback position, you almost get like the same outcome, albeit with a variation in terms of how it looks, right? So statistically, Michigan's pass and rush stats probably are very similar last year compared to this year. But when you look at the games, it may look slightly different, in particular with JJ utilizing his mobility a lot more. But in terms of how prolific the passing game is, it hasn't changed. And me and Des have been in lockstep with this since the beginning of last year. That is a problem. Now they've been able to get away with it. What are they 24-2, 22-2 last 2 years or something like that. So optically, it probably looks a little silly to bring it up. And I think a lot of times people get so caught up in that. Well, what are you guys complaining about? They're winning. But it just feels like when you pigeonhole yourself to play a certain brand of football without any kind of variation in your offense, be able to win a different type of way if the situation arises, setting yourself up for a pretty big disappointment, in particular in the bigger games. And that's the wild card. That's a negative wild card for Michigan's offense. If they so happen versus Ohio State, versus Georgia, Tennessee, whoever it is, playing those higher leverage games, we're not able to dominate with our running game. Is JJ prepared to win a football game like that? And to be quite honest, at this point, he's not, because he hasn't had to. And that's a bit of a concern.
Mark, what are your thoughts on it? I am no quarterback coach, but I would tell JJ McCarthy, okay, this is simple math that, or maybe geometry, that when you overthrow everyone their chances of catching the ball is 0%. If you want to try maybe shading on the other side, cautionary, and you underthrow, we call them 50-50 balls, but they're probably more like 70-30 balls, and you'll complete. Sure, you could throw an interception. It's possible, but we'll probably complete, 70 to 30 of those, jump balls. So they can't catch them when you overthrow all of them.
Or you at
That
least
is true.
15
That
yards
is
of
true.
pass interference.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there multiple things. I think multiple things can be true. I think number one, where I think Michigan's offense is today, is I think probably, let's see, I would say probably 2% of college football, Michigan cannot beat probably 2% of the teams playing the way that they play. They're probably not going to play any of those teams in the regular season. As much as I respect Ohio State and what they can do offensively and just as a team, I think Michigan playing the way that they play today, I think they can beat Ohio State. But what you also said, Dre, I think is true, is we haven't seen JJ have to take over a game and have consistent high level throws. But I also, like I said, I'm not sure you're going to need that, because my thought is I think Michigan can win this weekend. I think they can beat Ohio State in playing the style that they play. Big Ten championship, absolutely. And then from there, it's just kind of a toss-up of the draw that you get. I think if you get number 2 or number 3, let's all assume Georgia's going to win out and be the number 1 seed. So if you're number 2 or number 3, I think no matter who is in that other spot, I think Michigan can also beat that team, whoever 2 or number 3 or the Michigan matchup is. But I think when you get to a team like Georgia, I think Georgia is the best team in the country right now, and I think the way that both of those teams play, while I do think Michigan will need to have explosive passing plays to beat a team like Georgia, I could see that game coming down to, the fourth quarter of who really makes a mistake, because I think both of the teams play pretty overall conservative on offense. I think they both want to run the ball. They both want to play a certain way. And I think both defenses will probably do a pretty good job of limiting the other team's rush attack. So I think it's really going to be just who can last and who can not make a mistake. And even on the, you run a play action, is one team going to fumble? We saw Georgia when they played Tennessee, they had an early fumble. Now Tennessee couldn't capitalize, but I think that overall Michigan can continue to play this way and get probably to the game that they want to get to. But I also think that if you want to get over the hump, I think having an explosive pass game, I think having an explosive pass game would limit Michigan's weaknesses. I think Michigan would not have one if you do that.
I don't think anybody's saying that, and I would love to actually kind of segue that into Illinois, who Michigan faces Saturday. I think the question that I pose to myself at times, and I wonder if Michigan fans were to be honest with themselves, when there is a clear passing down situation, do you feel good about it? Like if it's 3rd and 7, right? 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, heck, let's say 3rd and 6. Do you feel comfortable passing the ball in a situation? Do you feel like, okay, I feel pretty good about this. We're going to find somebody open and we're going to make a play. I actually don't feel good about it. Like I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. That's literally how I feel at any time I know it's a clear passing situation, no matter how rare it is. Like as efficient as Michigan is at running the football, those situations don't come up a lot. But when they do, I'm like, I don't really know who's going to get the ball. Like I'm not, I'm like, okay, all right, well, I can depend on Ronnie Bell. Like, let's go to Ronnie Bell to make a play. Let's go to such and such to make a play. I can't do that with for certainty and feel comfortable. And that's what will always gives me that uneasiness, that I'm not asking to be Ohio State. I don't want to be like that stylistically. I'm saying like just to feel comfortable in clear passing situations, and I don't. Because I don't know if a certainty and Les Toast made a great point. A lot of times, Harbaugh 3rd and 7, we've seen it. He will run the football just to get close to the
Yeah.
4th down.
And if I can get 4th and 1, we'll go for it. We'll run it again.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't even think Harbaugh is comfortable passing in those situations. Seriously.
But I think that, to me, that's the point. I think the run game is such where I'm not sure you have to lean on that today, right? If you play in a playoff game, it's going to be, we are more than a month out if I'm doing my calendar correctly, right? You're a month out from that. Now, if you're asking what I would have done, it would have been very different. But Dre, we've been on the channel now. This is our 2nd season, and we were pining for it, begging for it from the beginning of last year to open up the pass game. And we would sit on here post game, and Cade McNamara has 15 pass attempts, 5 single digit pass attempts, and we're like, you're playing Western Michigan, throw the ball. And that's just not what he's going to do. He's just not going to air the ball out. So there is the concern of, well, what happens when we absolutely have to? But I mean, it's just such a difficult thing because of, last year it got you to 12-1 and playing Georgia in the playoffs. So it's difficult. I would love for it to look at least a little bit different, but we kind of are where we are.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we at Illinois. It's here this weekend.
The number 1 rusher in the country,
Chase Brown, right? It's his name, Chase Brown. So look, Brett Bielema, I commend him on the job he has done. I mean, he did a fantastic job at Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin maybe now regretting not giving him what he wanted and letting him go to Arkansas years ago. Seeing that what he's starting to, it looks like from a philosophical standpoint, make Illinois, Wisconsin 2.0. So, albeit they've had 2 rough weeks lately, losing to MSU, and then also, Purdue. So, to be quite honest with you, if you would have asked me about this game a month ago, I would have had not concern, but I definitely would have been intrigued because I felt like at that time, wow, maybe Illinois can give us a Wisconsin-esque test, which is that they may not be as talented as Michigan, but maybe from a physicality standpoint, they would have that same type of feel. And maybe one day that will be the case, right? Maybe I'm sure Brett, needs some more time to get his players. But they've had 2 rough weeks lately, so I really don't know what to expect from Illinois. So I'll turn it over to you. I mean, what do you think we're going to see?
I think it's tough to look at this Illinois team and know exactly what you're going to get just from the pure standpoint that they're really hurt right now with injuries. When you talk about the depth of this team and you talked about some of the talent level that is different from what you see at Wisconsin compared to Illinois, like the depth of this roster just isn't at a spot now in Brett Bielema's 2nd year where they're able to sustain injuries at certain positions. Like running back is a position that they have good depth at with Chase Brown and Josh McCray, but both of those guys are questionable this week. Chase Brown rolled his ankle late in the game against Purdue, and Josh McCray's kind of had a weird season. He injured his knee in the Wyoming game. That was all the way back in week 0. He missed a few weeks, then comes back, plays only a series, I think, at Nebraska, and then they come back home, I believe, against Michigan State, and he gets horse collar tackled near the Illinois sideline, just kind of goes down awkwardly, and then I believe rolls his ankle, so sprained ankle. He's questionable. Coach Bielema said that they're both, quote, trending this right direction on Monday, but he's kind of weird when it comes to talking about the injuries and how likely it is guys are to play. I don't blame him. Like, there's no law that says you got to do it because sports gambling is not legal across yet. So I don't blame him for, saying questionable things or about a guy's availability. But even on the defensive side, like cornerback and defensive back in general is a position that they're pretty thin at. While Devin Witherspoon is one of the best corners in the Big Ten, a potential all Big Ten first team member, probably a day 2 NFL draft selection. They are thin opposite him. Taz Nicholson's going to be out for the rest of the year. He's their other starting corner. He dislocated his wrist against Purdue. They've got a few other guys at corner that might not play. Terrell Jennings doesn't sound like he's going to play either. He's out for the year, I think, with a chest injury, I think is what it is. And then Tyler Strand, he's a sophomore, academically a redshirt freshman, I think, on the roster. He has a concussion or suffered a concussion against Purdue. So his availability is kind of up in the air. So if Strand's not able to play, then they're going to look at Xavier Scott, who's a true freshman that they blue shirted. Then they'll also give Elijah McCantos an opportunity there at corner. So health-wise, Illinois is kind of for the first time this year experiencing some injuries and some concerns, I guess you could say. And throughout that 6-game winning streak that they had to get to 7-1 on the year, like they maintained pretty good health. So that's something that's definitely going to be of a key, I would say, going into this game. And of other things for Illinois, just like the offensive line hasn't played as well the last couple of weeks, and Chase Brown in the last 2 weeks, last weekend's Purdue was the first time they didn't get over 100 yards, dating back to last season's final game against Northwestern. Finished with 93, so it was close. He did have 2 touchdowns, so it's still a really good game for him. But he hasn't gotten to the edge as much, and obviously Michigan's a pretty quick defense. I know their linebackers aren't great in pass coverage, but that's obviously something that they're going to need to be able to do because you don't just run it right up the middle against Michigan very well. They tend to have pretty good defensive tackles, and their linebackers are good in the box. So those are things that are of concern. And then also just like the pass game, they don't have a game-breaking wide receiver. They don't have someone who's a big, deep threat. And teams have kind of really started to take away the run game by putting a lot of guys in the box and saying, okay, we're going to make you run it. And Illinois is fine to run the ball. They want to run the ball, right? But at the same time, they need to be able to get to the edge a little bit so they can gain more yards, so they can get in a favorable second down and a favorable third down, because when they don't, their offense becomes really, really, really stagnant. It's really important for them to gain good amount of yards on first and second down to be in a manageable second and third where they can convert and move the chains.
Yeah, Alec, that's an interesting matchup because I will say, especially in terms of running it up the middle, teams virtually have no success. Of course, Michigan doing that this year because they've had two tremendous defensive tackles, and Chris Jenkins, not Chris, is this Chris or is his dad name? At the Chris Jenkins, I know that's his dad.
No, I don't think it's Chris, but
No,
Jenkins. Just roll with Jenkins.
Yeah. But Chris is his father. Anyway, Jenkins, Mason Graham, and of course Big Monty Smith, who has been a freak of nature this entire season. So running it up the middle really has been an area that teams have had any success. If anything, is getting out to the outside, and then also teams that have bigger receivers have been able to exploit the size of our corners at times, especially DJ Turner. But I actually think that Will Johnson, who's a 5-star corner, who's gotten more and more time, a true freshman throughout the year, has been playing well during the course of the season, and now he's starting to solidify one of the corner positions and kind of negate some of those deep shots. So from the sounds of it, Illinois is not going to have much of a not going to have their way from a strategic standpoint. To win this football game. But what I do find interesting is, just give us more of an insight on just like the energy of Illinois football. To get off the 7-1 start. The latest fun Illinois times I can remember is back in the Juice Williams days. It was a while ago.
Rashard Mendenhall. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's quite a while ago. So it's been you guys have been down in the dust for quite a while. Is there like a belief in this program? Is there like a juice, if you will?
Yeah, it's a really good question. If you would asked me 2 weeks ago, I would tell you that Illinois fans are as excited about football as they probably have been in a really long time. Then follow that up with 2 pretty frustrating and disappointing losses where the Illini could have clinched a Big Ten West title had they beat Michigan State and had they beat Purdue on their home field in the last 2 weeks. And even if they had lost to Michigan State and then beat Purdue, they essentially would have won the Big Ten West had they beaten Northwestern in the final week of the regular season. While I say all that and the temperature of the entire program from a fan's perspective is lower than it was 2 weeks ago, it's hard to not look at the program as a whole and just kind of realize the positive direction that it's moved in. Illinois hasn't had a winning season in the Big Ten since 2007 when they went to the Rose Bowl, played USC in the 2008 Rose Bowl. They've obviously not had a lot of success in the last decade. I think they only went to 3 bowl games in the 2010s. And that's obviously a pretty embarrassing stat when you kind of think about how easy it is to get 6 wins.
And we had the COVID year where like five win teams got in. They took a bunch of them.
Yeah, it's not difficult to go 500, especially when you play 3 cupcakes in a Big Ten. You get 2 MAC teams in an FCS school. But no, in an overall sense of the world, yeah, it's moving in a positive direction from a fan's perspective. There's definitely more energy. And Coach Bielema, like you kind of said in your opening first question that I had there, or that you had for me there, was he's got a good history in the Big Ten. He knows how to win in the Big Ten. And I also think it's important to recognize that I don't think Illinois football fans are expecting them to compete for a Big Ten title every year. Like, I don't think they expect to compete for a college football playoff berth. Like, they just want to go to a bowl game every single year. If they turned into Iowa, they turned into Wisconsin, they would be the happiest bunch because they just want to get to November.
Low bar.
Yeah, because they just want to get to November when it's
Relax.
basketball season.
No, I'm joking.
Like the last, what's really funny is I've been joking with friends, and I don't cover Illinois anymore. I cover K-State now, but I'm still kind of plugged in. But I've been joking with friends about Illinois. I was like, they picked a great time to start being bad again because basketball season's here. Like the basketball team is 3-0. They're going out to Vegas this weekend. They've got UCLA on Friday, and then on Sunday, the winner or loser of Baylor and Virginia. Like, they picked a perfect time. They got to November. They played meaningful football through October. Now they're going to go to Michigan. They're probably going to get smoked. This is how it goes. Like, Illinois fans, just get them to November, get them to basketball season. They're going to be happy.
Side note, and is Kofi still there, the big fella?
He's not. Kofi's going over to play professionally in Japan.
Gotcha. He was in preseason with a team, wasn't he? I thought I saw him in like the G League or something.
Exhibit 10 deal coming out of the draft. He went undrafted, and he didn't play super well in the summer league. So then they ended up not renewing him, and they actually ended up signing Micah Potter instead. That's who his contract spot went to.
Oh wow, that's interesting. I know it's a different form, but it is interesting. I thought for sure Kofi starts with a B. I thought for sure he would have been got some kind of spot.
Coburn, I think.
Coburn, yeah, he's a beast.
Yeah, I think the tough part, and we can move past Big Ten basketball, but I think a difficult part is a lot of their the centers and their big men are the traditional centers and big men, whereas the game is now going towards. You see a guy like Draymond Green as a center, and now Ben Simmons is like a backup center. Like it's just it's almost kind of, you hear it a lot, positionless basketball. So
it's the same thing in Michigan. It's the same reason why Hunter Dickinson's back for a junior year. It's the same reason he was back for a sophomore year. He did have a great spot.
I'll get more money out of NIL than he probably will.
I thought Michigan's NIL was a bad thing. I didn't think it was in a great spot.
Hey, that's something.
Here's what I do know is if you're winning, good things happen. Good things happen when you're winning. Good things happen when you're winning.
But that's on the football field. Go ahead, Des.
Yeah. So, Alec, if you had to, I'm not going to ask you to call a spread or anything like that, but it sounds like you think Michigan is going to win the game. It sounds like there's just a laundry list of. You listed a lot of guys who were either banged up or out. And I even think with even going in at full health, this probably still would have been a challenge for Illinois. So are you expecting a, kind of similar result that Michigan's had the last couple of weeks, like kind of the 31-10, like that variety?
Yeah, I think what's the betting line? 18? Is that what Michigan's fair?
I think it's something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, I would probably pick Michigan. The only reason I wouldn't pick Michigan is if they're looking ahead to the game next week.
Yeah,
and that's the only reason why I wouldn't do it. I don't think Illinois is healthy enough to beat Michigan. Quite frankly, Illinois isn't talented enough to beat Michigan, and they're definitely not going to do it at the Big House, which is obviously a tough place to play. I imagine that it's going to be sold out again this weekend as Michigan, like you guys said earlier, is like 22-2 in their last 24 games or whatever it is. So I think it's going to be a tough place to play. Now, I will say Illinois does have or has proven to be successful on the road under Coach Bielema. Last year, they went on the road and beat a top 10 ranked Penn State team at the time. They went on the road last year and beat a top 20, top 25 ranked Minnesota team at the time. And this year, they've had some success on the road as well. They went on the road and beat Nebraska, which I know isn't saying a lot because Nebraska's not good, but it's still going on the road to a stadium that fits, 90,000 people. They went on the road and beat Wisconsin in Camp Randall, which is obviously one of the tougher places to play on the west side of the Big Ten. And those are obviously impressive things to be able to do, because when you're on the road in college football, it's difficult, especially in the Big Ten and the SEC. But yeah, I think Michigan's in a spot where they play such an almost suffocating style of football, where I just think that they're going to be able to run the ball, control the clock. And that's saying a lot, because Illinois' defense has been really, really good, guys. I mean, if you look at some of the numbers, like their stop rate, I think, is in the top 10 in the country still. Their rush defense has been one of the best in the entire country. And really, their pass defense has been great this entire season as well, highlighted by Devin Witherspoon at cornerback, Quan Martin, it's their star / nickel position, and then at strong safety, they've got Sidney Brown, who's another potential NFL player, and Kendall Smith actually has like 4 picks on the year, which at one point was leading the entire country. So like their pass defense has been good, their rush defense has been good, highlighted by, you'll probably hear this term on the broadcast, the law firm of Newton and Randolph. It's 2 defensive linemen. Coach Bielema started this. They ended up getting an NIL deal out of it. But yeah, Keith Randolph, Johnny Newton have been great this year on the defensive line. Newton has one of the top pressure rates in all of college football. He's a potential Big Ten first team all conference member. Yeah, like there is reason if Michigan does struggle in this game, it is going to be because Newton and Randolph and Calvin Avery, their defensive tackle, kind of gets back on the right track. He struggled a little bit more the last 2 weeks. Avery has, and they slow down Blake Corum because Illinois does have good linebackers. Seth Coleman's coming back healthy after missing last week with a concussion. So yeah, if you take away the run game, Illinois might have a chance. But when was the last time someone took away Michigan's run game?
I was gonna say that's a tough task. Task.
You got to think about that. I'll be a lot more. I still won't say concerned, but intrigued if this was at Illinois. I think the fact that this is the last home game before Ohio State, literally the last home game in general, regardless, this season that these fans are going to be able to see this team is the week before Ohio State. That there's going to be a high sense of energy, especially from the fans in that stadium. Almost kind of like a send-off for the guys to go out there next week and take care of business. The energy will be where it needs to be in the stadium. And I think the players will feel off that. But I do think, don't be surprised if this is like a long, drawn-out kind of a game in terms of it's not going to be a lot of excitement, a lot of excited plays. I think this is going to be one of those games, very similar to the second half Michigan had versus Nebraska, in which they essentially just kind of just warm down with the running game. It was like a slow death to Nebraska. It really was. And I can see Saturday being like that for Illinois. Michigan especially, it's going to be cold. They're not going to make things very complicated. They're going to simplify things even more, I believe. And it's going to be one of those games where Harbaugh is just going to try to do the simple, easiest thing, get the game over, keep his guys healthy as possible, and get ready for next week. So from a score standpoint, it might be a game for longer than people might perceive. Would that be through the first half? It's very plausible. Here's what you have to understand. Michigan hasn't got out to great first halves most throughout the year. I mean, they've been within one score versus Maryland, Penn State, Indiana. They was tied at half versus Indiana, Iowa. I mean, like a lot of times.
Rutgers.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say Rutgers. They were were they down at half? Or were
Rutgers, they were down. They were down at half.
Yeah, was it 17-14 at half?
Yeah. So it's like they tend to start off pretty slow, and then kind of wear you out in the second half. So I can see Saturday being like that very much so. I don't know if that's going to give any Illinois fans a false sense of security or optimism. But look, I don't like that. If there's one trend about my team that I don't like, it's the fact that they do get off these slow starts, because you do allow the opportunity for the opposite team to get some confidence and to feel like, almost like the little Giants on this time, we got them right. Any other day they're going to get it. But one time, no, and it's funny and it's a movie, but it's true though. Like especially in a game like football, where you just keep flirting with a team that you have no business with, and then all of a sudden you're like, it's midway through the third quarter and we're in this thing, and then you add in the elements. All it takes is a couple mistakes, by even a superior team, and all of a sudden you have a chance to steal one. So I would definitely say going to Saturday, that Illinois fans should feel like, well, I think there's a chance we can hang around, and who knows? I would definitely take that approach.
I will say this too, like, and this isn't meant to come off as a shot at Michigan because they don't really control this, although they kind of did, I guess, this year. They haven't really played anyone great outside of Penn State. Like, the Big Ten in general is down this season, so that has something to do with their schedule being a little bit softer. And then the fact that they canceled or moved the game with UCLA, that's what happened, right? Like, Michigan was the one who got rid of it. Is that right? Is that what happened?
I'm not quite sure how that all went down. I
That
don't
was
really know.
weird. I don't want to put it on one school or the other, and it sucks that the game didn't happen because it would have been really entertaining.
And especially this year too. Yeah, it'd have been
and each school
awesome.
kind of needs it on their schedule. Although now with UCLA's out of the playoff contention, but Michigan would benefit from having that one on their schedule. I do think you can make a legitimate argument that Illinois is the second best team that Michigan's played this season. Like, they're better than Colorado State, they're better than Hawaii, they're better than UConn. They're no
Maryland's
worse
been on a slide right now recently.
Yeah, they're no worse than Maryland. They beat Iowa 10-9.
Oh, don't say that. Hey, look, Alec, don't say that. Look, after we played Maryland, you had a lot of people that was hyping up Maryland. You'll be surprised.
I actually will say I do this thing every year where if Maryland wasn't in the Big Ten East, I actually think that they would be a lot better. They just
I actually agree with that too.
They get the shaft because they get 3 losses on their schedule immediately, sometimes 4 when Michigan State's good.
Yeah.
But dude, I had people on. We had people in our chat saying, "Man, I think Maryland is a contender in the Big Ten." I'm like, "What are we talking about?" Like,
no, I don't go that far. I don't go that far. I don't go that far. No, I do not go that far. But I do think if they're one of the programs that's really hurt by divisions in college football.
Yeah, they
are. Have to play those 4 schools every year. They'd benefit from it a lot. But yeah, Michigan State beat them, but Michigan State hasn't really shown to be good this year. By any means. I mean, I know Michigan kind of screwed around with them for 3.5 quarters or however long it was, but there is a world where Illinois does go into the Big House and competes for a long time, and the last thing Michigan needs in this situation is to go into this game, it be 7.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it's a 1-score game. That's the last thing Michigan needs with what's coming next week.
Well, look, I mean, different scenario. And granted, once again, this goes against my point of the game being at home. But back in 2017 or 2018, Ohio State struggled with a really bad Maryland team the week before they played Michigan, and should have lost. And Gaz and I will continue to harp on, and I don't even remember who the Maryland quarterback was, but he sucks because really,
that was a pretty awful throw. That was a one-hopper to a wide-open guy.
To this day, I would never. And of course, I'm a Michigan fan. I'm like, oh, this is delicious. Let them lose. This is great. But anyway, it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter. You have to show up and play. But I will say, someone said this earlier in the chat, and it's true. One thing about Harbaugh's teams, even though they have gotten off to slower starts, in terms of their focus, more times than not, I think their slow starts are more due to philosophical approach, strategic approach, how they play call and all that stuff. From a focus standpoint, they have been pretty good under Harbaugh, beating the teams they're supposed to beat. And for the most part, doing it in convincing fashion by the time the final score is there. So there's that, but I don't know. I'm definitely interested. I want Brett Bielema to be not Saturday, but I want him to be successful at Illinois because we need more. The Big Ten needs more teams, especially the West. It needs more.
It does.
And it's just, I mean, has the Big Ten West won a conference championship game?
No,
I don't think. I don't think since
the East has won every single one of them, and a lot of them have been pretty convincing. And I don't want to get this off track too much, but you make a great point about how the Big Ten West and the Big Ten in general, and they are going to get rid of divisions here, it sounds like, at least in a couple of years. But the Big Ten needs more schools that are consistently competing at a high level, right? And I'll compare it to the SEC because it's the most direct comparison. In the Big Ten this year, guys, how many games going into it has an average college football fan, maybe not a fan of a specific Big Ten school, looked at a Big Ten game and circled it and like, I want to watch that at big noon or 2:30. Is it legitimately like 2 games this entire year that's been played?
Yeah,
The
hasn't
Ohio
been many.
State Penn State game and then the Michigan Penn State game. I mean, last weekend there was 2 SEC games alone that I feel like people were excited about with LSU Arkansas, and Arkansas was still coming off of a loss at Liberty, and then Bama going down to Oxford to play Ole Miss. Like, that's the biggest difference between the 2 leagues is that we can count how many SEC teams that legitimately try to compete for a national title on a year-over-year basis, and then how many teams in the Big Ten are trying to do it. I mean, I think you can make a legitimate argument that up until last year, like, and I don't even know if you can make the argument now, like with the way Michigan recruits, that there's not more than one team in the Big Ten that's currently in there that's trying to win a national title with their investment that they make into the program and the way they try on the recruiting trail and all those things. Like, Ohio State's been the only program that's consistently competed for it since the playoff has started.
Yeah, and it's difficult, but I think Michigan is currently at the most difficult spot, which is they're at the point now where I think we would all say they're a really good team right now.
Absolutely, they're better
this year and last
than they were
year.
Last year,
absolutely, I agree with that wholeheartedly. But it's getting from that point to being one of the elite schools and like winning a playoff game, winning a national championship. And it's difficult. Like most of the teams, like it takes some steps to get there. Like it's actually usually where Michigan is right now, where you make it to the playoff. Okay, you lost the game then, and then you get to that point where it's like, okay, we're now competing here. We can do this, and then you get to that point. But it's difficult that push because there's just so much that goes into it, like health. We were just talking about how banged up Illinois is. Your fulfillment for the season when your expectations are so high is at the end of the season, and it's all or nothing. Like there is no in between, right? So you get to the playoff and you win your first playoff game. You're super high, but now the expectation is, okay, next week let's win the national championship. And then if you lose it, it's like, oh man, like it's
like
difficult.
Where it's like no one gives a damn if you don't win the last game of the year. And that's part of the reason why I'm excited for a 12-team playoff when that comes at some point, because like I saw a graphic that Joe Platt put today on his show where he counted 33 teams if it was a 12-team playoff field that would still be in contention of making the playoff. And I do think that graphic was slightly flawed because it has every team that's still competing for a Big Ten West title in it. Like, yeah, but not really, because if you get rid of divisions when they do this, like they're really not actually going to be competing for it because Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa wouldn't play for a Big Ten title. It would end up being, obviously Ohio State, Michigan.
Yeah.
Play 2 weeks in a row. But that's awesome. Like that's so fun. And it gives so many more schools a reason to stay invested in the season on a year-over-year basis. Because if you're, I've seen guys who are, like, you win this weekend in a 12-team playoff model, and suddenly, like, you're back in the mix of potentially making it. So that's what's cool about the 12-team playoff is that it's going to keep so many more fan bases engaged, and it gives everyone a reason to think that they can make the playoff, but trick people into thinking that they can compete for a national title because you really can't. Like Illinois, I'm sorry, you're not.
Well, I even think about like last year, right? Cincinnati made it at number 4.
Yeah.
And I can't remember where Coastal Carolina finished, but like potentially could we have 2 of the quote unquote, small guys in a unique year make it to where, it's like, hey, maybe more than one could get in.
Yeah.
Now they're probably going to lose, but nonetheless, like I think Coastal could be a tough.
Have a chance.
Yes,
really
absolutely.
Don't. Like everyone thinks you have a chance until you play Georgia. You play Georgia and you get smoked.
And they just suffocate you as a team. It's like, what is going on? It just did nonstop.
They're bringing back to earth very quickly.
Yes, they do.
Like, does anyone? I don't know if there's a fan base that understands this better than Michigan right now. Like Michigan fans probably were like going into this, we're like, all right, we can win a national title.
Yes.
And then it was halftime. They're like, oh.
These guys are really good. Yeah, that team that played against Alabama in the SEC championship, they aren't here today. These are just aliens across the board.
Yeah.
Life comes at you fast. It comes at you fast.
It
and
does.
Hard.
Very true.
There are 7 draft picks on that defense. That is the greatest defense of the last 15 years.
Yep. That wasn't a lie.
He's that
That
tight
was
end number
true.
19. Oh, he looks pretty good on tape. Oh wow,
Brock
he is
Bowers
fast.
is- yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
it's just like the scene
unreal.
from Friday Night Lights. Coach, they fast.
They're big.
They big.
They're mean.
They're
Coach, they're
dirty.
fast. You said that already.
man, that number 0 playing tight end for Georgia is huge. How big is he? Yeah, he's 6'7", 270. Oh,
Yep.
yeah, we
And
don't have
hurtling
anyone
hurtling other human beings, hurtling
Yeah.
people.
We don't have someone who can tackle that here.
No, not many teams do.
No.
Before we wrap, Alec, what's your if you had a prediction on next week, Michigan, Ohio State, who would you lean? Let's say that. I'm not gonna say favor. Who would you lean?
I knew that I was expecting this question to come up. Okay, so I guess I've entered the season like most people and expected Ohio State to kind of be a force to be reckoned with. And when they've played really well, we've kind of seen them be that for a lot of the season, excluding like the games that they decided they didn't really want to show up or they were bored. I think Ohio State's the more talented team. I think Ohio State's probably the better team most days. But with that being said, like Michigan having to go on the road only adds to that difficulty. I do think that the outcome of this game could largely depend on the weather of the game, which kind of sucks. Like I don't want that to have an impact on the outcome of the game. Like I generally want the better team to win. I'll side Ohio State because the game's at the Horseshoe. I also think that there's an intrinsic motivation for Ohio State that they have circled November 26th since whatever day of the year it was last year that they lost to Michigan, because it's like, well, Michigan fans, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, view losing to Ohio State as being unacceptable. Like it's kind of become expected almost to lose to Ohio State over the last 15 years or so. Whereas like at Ohio State, if you lose to Michigan, like if Ryan Day loses to Michigan, it's going to be real uncomfortable for him going into the 2023 season. Like it was never really getting that uncomfortable for Jim Harbaugh because he lost to Ohio State. Like it got uncomfortable for him because they lost a lot of games in 2020. So I'll side with Ohio State. I think it's going to be an all-time game. I think it's probably the biggest game in the series history since 2006 when it was number 1 versus number 2. And I will say this. I think there's a real chance that each team gets into the playoff, which I think would be awesome for the Big Ten. As a league that hasn't had 2 teams in the playoff yet, I think that'd be sweet to get them both in there.
Okay.
I wanted to speak really quickly to that. I won't say that it was acceptable to lose Ohio State, but like you said, Alec, it happened so often that it was like, well, like it felt like let's just have a puncher's chance first. Then, like you always knew that they had to one up on us. They have the talent. There was a little bit of a talent gap, and you just felt like let's be competitive. Let's have a puncher's chance. But what made it bad was that what amplified the Ohio State losses was the fact that Harbaugh was having other demons that he couldn't conquer. Right, he couldn't win for a while a ranked game on the road, and he was struggling locally here versus MSU. That really aided, like created that intensity. I think now that we beat them, I don't think that it's flipped. If you're a realistic Michigan fan, I don't think it's flipped from we beat them now, we should beat them every year. I think every Michigan fan that's understanding of the game, you still probably have the understanding that Ohio State still probably has the edge on us. You think about year-to-year recruiting and development for the most part. But I think that now what last year has shown, I think this year as well, if you've watched both teams closely, is that there is a chink in the armor of Ohio State, and that Michigan has a unique formula that can potentially take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think in previous years, I think lately Ohio State hasn't had quite the physicality they've had before. And I think Michigan does have that. So that physicality can kind of help close that gap on the football field, where if whoever can be more efficient with their game, it's going to win, if that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. 100%. And I guess I'd like to say here too, like when you look at what these two teams have been this year, like I've kind of gone back and forth in my head where, okay, maybe Michigan's better than Ohio State, or okay, no, I think Ohio State's better. Like it kind of changes on a week over week basis where even like last year up to the game, I felt like Ohio State was better. And then Michigan just physically dominated them. Like they didn't need to throw the ball to win. I mean, they throw it 4 times in the second half. Like they just kicked the crap out of them for 4 quarters. And maybe that happens again this year. And I wouldn't be shocked if it did, because there's times where you watch Ohio State's offense and it's like, why can't they run the ball? They have offensive linemen. Paris Johnson is incredible. And obviously Ohio State's dealing with some injury issues on the offensive line with, or not on the offensive line, at running back with Trayvon Henderson. Hasn't really played much this entire season. Mayan Williams goes out last week. Like there's reason to believe that Michigan can go in here and win the game. And for as much as people like to look at like the Ohio State side and say the motivation factor for them to win this game is so large because they lost it last year. It's at the Horseshoe. It's going to be CJ Stroud's last time there. All these different things, right? Like you put all that together, and it's like Ohio State has so much anger built up for this game. Michigan,
that crowd's going to be absolutely vicious. Like
Michigan has it too, though, because Michigan can flip. Like if Michigan wins, don't you feel like it kind of flips the script on everything you just said about this? Where since 2006, it's been like, okay, Ohio State's going to win this game. Besides for a couple years that was close, like 2016, and then whatever year you want to talk about. But if Michigan wins again,
like back-to-back years, like oh man,
it's gonna feel like something flipped. And it's
even if it isn't all the way true, it's going to feel that way. Like even if it's not like, well, Michigan's the better program, it's going to feel that way.
It's going to be a look in the mirror moment for Ohio State if it's because they have more talent, they have better players, they recruit better. So if that's not how you're going to beat them, what do you need to do to beat them? Is going to be what it is for Ohio State if they don't win on a week from Saturday.
It's a philosophical thing, and I think and Des and I talked about this at the beginning of the year. Des and I'm sure you will recall is that we were saying that this is a great opportunity for Michigan because it's a chance if you're able to do what you did last year. You beat Ohio State, you win the Big Ten. This could be like that changing of the guard moment where Ohio State's they've been the king of the Big Ten, right? But if you get them 2 years in a row, once at home and once in their house with everything on the table, start to flip things a little bit. And what I think it will show is that no, Michigan is not getting as many 5-star kids as Ohio State is able to get, but philosophically, Michigan has found a way to beat them. And I think this is where Ryan Day will find himself under fire, will be like, hold on a second, what can he say? What excuse will he have? On paper, you have probably more, high caliber talent than Michigan does. Not by a lot. We're not Wisconsin or something like that, but you have more 5-star kids on paper. How have you been losing the last 2 weeks? Is it physicality? Is it mental? So, no, I think this is a grand opportunity for Michigan. I think it's a heightened sense of awareness by Ohio State that we have to get this game. And I think that crowd is going to be absolutely on fire. Like on fire.
It's probably a good thing they don't share a tunnel there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So before we wrap, I wanted to get your guys' quick comments on this. GOJ, thanks for the comment. He always tunes in. It says, Ohio State told y'all a story. Ohio State will rush for over 200 yards against Michigan. They're going to blow Michigan out. Now, I'll give my 2 cents. They're not rushing for 200 yards. They may blow out Michigan. I don't think anything is off the table in a rivalry game, especially one of this magnitude, but that's not happening. Dre, your thoughts on that?
I'm surprised. GOJ he's here every week, and he's normally a pretty measured person. But I think it's
getting close. It's boiling. It's boiling.
It's getting close to the game, and I think his Buckeye blood is starting to come out a little bit. No. I mean, you don't flip the switch like that. That's just not going to happen. You've been struggling to run a football all year, and you're not going to just all of a sudden flip the switch and then run a football well for first one of the best rush defense in the country. It's just not going to happen. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a formula for you to blow out Michigan. Look, I've said this. Michigan plays on a razor's edge, especially in the way they play in the first half. If somehow Ohio State gets off to a hot start and offensively they're, because what Michigan's really good at is Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, is fantastic with second half adjustments. Well, how big of a hole does Michigan get in the first half before they actually get to those adjustments, right? If you find yourself down 21-10, 11 points down at the horseshoe, that's a death sentence. So, and that's a formula for now you're out of whack, right? Now you got to pass the ball more. And then Michigan's in an uncomfortable situation. You go 3-and-out a couple times, and then the game can get away from you. So it's definitely possible for this game to get away from Michigan. I'm not saying that can't happen, but to do it in that nature that GOJ is saying, that's just not going to happen. It had to be another.
Alec, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this game could go either way, or any of three ways. I think Ohio State could blow out Michigan. I think Michigan could blow out Ohio State. And I think it could be a one-score game that's decided in overtime. I do think Ohio State could do that, though. Like
Rush for 200?
Yeah, I do think they could.
Okay.
If both Williams and Henderson are healthy, the offensive line has a good day because it is a good offensive line. I know it's not a Joe Moore finalist. Like there are 5 offensive linemen on that group who could probably play in the NFL. Like I wouldn't be shocked if they did it. Would I be surprised? Yeah, maybe a little bit. I do think it's gonna be a close game. Like before the season started, like my friend and I would talk about this, and I was like, yeah, I think we were both like Ohio State's going to win by like 600. But then like as I started like get into it more, and I was doing prep on Michigan as I was still covering Illinois before I moved over to K-State, it was like I think Michigan's going to be undefeated going into this game. I was like, I think Ohio State's going to be undefeated going into this game, and lo and behold, we've got 2 total games until it happens.
Don't mess it up, guys. Don't mess it up. Oh man, it's gonna be exciting. I actually hope your last scenario does happen. Like seeing this game go into overtime would be it'd be awesome just because it is the most watched game in college football. Like that would be incredible. Like the entire world is going to be watching that game. But
I mean, there's a playoff berth on the line for this game.
Right.
Assuming they don't. Assuming the other team doesn't do something unprecedented and lose to a Big Ten West team in the Big Ten championship game. And if Iowa ends up there, like Ohio State beat them 54-10 and they played like garbage in the first half. So like no one in the Big Ten West is beating one of these 2 teams in Indianapolis. So
it's a real letdown where like literally the last game of your regular season is so much more important and so much and a much higher caliber game to your conference championship, and like compared to SEC title game, that's not really the case. Like
no, it's not.
Like literally, it's a big letdown. Like for either team, it's like, man, we just played a war. And now it's kind of like, this is this is the championship game. Like it's kind of, but no, man, I think we're in store for a great couple of weeks of football. I'm excited to get to the big house. We'll be there, guys. To see this game. Want to see Michigan take care of business and
follow our. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because I will probably post where we are on the channel just in case anybody is there. I think John had mentioned that he'll be there. One Scoop John. So yeah, please subscribe. Keep an eye out. We'll be there. I don't know how phone service is, so if it doesn't get posted, please don't go crazy. But Alec, thanks so much, man, for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. Loved talking with you.
Again, man. We enjoyed you. Really
did. Man. Anytime you guys need me to preview Illinois, talk Big Ten, whatever it is. I don't know how much basketball stuff you guys do, given the name of the show. Probably not a ton. But yeah, hit me up anytime. Just shoot me a message on Twitter, and I'm always happy to hop on.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We will be live after the game. Be flexible with us because we will be there. So, obviously, that the phone service isn't quite great. So, we'll figure it out. But we will be on here live for about an hour or so talking about this game and then, obviously, talking about Ohio State because at that point, the clock is ticking. So, thanks for tuning in. Thanks again, Alec, for joining us. You guys have a good night.
Yeah.
Peace.